There's a lot happening around us, and if we do not know about it, it's like staying less informed. And that's why we bring to you a program like this to review newspaper headlines as well as happenings around us, Nigeria as well as Africa. And we'll be diving into it without wasting time. Welcome to your newspaper review on Idea Television. I am Jacob Steph. And the first newspaper we'll be looking at is the Tribune front page newspaper, where we see the Fed head calls posts strong earning growth in H1 2025. That story can be found in page 5. And in page 4, we see that the North calls for equitable distribution of resources to address regional imbalance. And we also see that Bagudu says that Tinubu has been faithful to the North in page 3 of that newspaper. And the big headline, we see that NNPC rules out sales of Port Harcourt refinery in page 2. And in page 25, we see that Benue IDPs protest over 1 billion naira donation by Tinubu's wife. And beneath it in page 2 also, we see that $245 billion human trafficking surge threatens Nigerian security, AGF says. And in page 12, we see that Delicate deploys 1,750 IMLO teachers corps to Osun School. And in health, we see that there's a lead in gasoline-linked cognitive impairment in the Gen X. That story we'll be looking into. We hear that a new study has presented itself at the 2025 Al-Mazri Association International Conference that has revealed a troubling link between the past lead exposure to memory problem later in life. Researchers found that people who lived in areas with moderate to high atmospheric lead levels in 1960s to 1970s, when the landed gasoline use was at its peak, face a significant and risk of memory loss. These particular people are called the Generation X. Those are people born between the year of 1966 and the year of 1986. They appear to particularly be affected by this particular disease, and this disease takes time before it shows. And the researchers have actually come out to say that this is proven that people who have been born in those years and are seen now with memory loss as a result of this particular pollution that took place in those years. And what is happening is that this serious illness has become a public health and a public concern to everybody, that it doesn't show in that particular year that you catch it, but it takes a longer year to actually come to the surface. And researchers has actually begged the government that pollution, air pollution, water pollution might not have effects now in this year, might not have effect on particular people that they have affected, might not have effects now, may not show face now, but might hide inside their body till when years after they actually come out and actually show faces, and this actually causes memory loss and as well as other diseases that are related. The next story we'll be looking at is the nurses' strike ground hospital, as people would actually protest against this. We heard that the Nigerian nurses have actually come out to protest that they are going to go on strike, but the people around have come out to plead, saying that so many federal government hospitals have actually gone on strike, and this has become a serious issue with the citizens of Nigeria. The next newspaper front page we'll be looking at is the Punch newspaper front page, where we see that the patient groans as nurses strike, just like the one we just looked at in the last newspaper front page. Hospital goes on nationwide strike. We also see beside it in page 7 that Rep probes Nigerian miners abuse claim in car. And the big headline where we see that the federal government eyes 7,960 billion naira annually from 5% petrol surge. And we also see UTME fraud. JAM prosecuted 110 in 5 years. We also see the Port Harcourt refinery not for sale, NNPC says. Back to our story on the varsity students to face drug tests, says Educational Minister in page 7. We heard that the federal government is set to introduce compulsory and random drug tests for students in Nigerian universities as part of the effort to tackle rising substance abuse among youth. The Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alosa, has announced that this policy will take effect immediately after the meeting, and the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency NDLA comes out to actually support this particular move by our Minister of Education. We hear that this has led to so many problems we're seeing and facing on our youths in Nigeria presently, and the National Drug and Law Agency, as well as the Educational Minister, has come out to say to actually put an end to all of these particular things we see surging out of our youth, like cybercrimes as well as other security issues, is to actually put an end to the drug intake by our students. So they'll be moving from one university to another. As to enter a university, you must actually take a drug test, and also as a university student, you would actually be eligible to take a drug test as to be or to continue as a student in any university. And this is actually a good move to actually stop the intake of drugs and the abuse of drugs in our nation. The next newspaper front page we'll be looking at is the Peak newspaper, where we see the federal government to introduce compulsory drug tests for the university students. The last story we just looked at, and we said that Nigerians are not happy. Ex-Ekiti Governor Fayemi slams Tinubu's government. And beside it, we see the Labour Party youth leaders declares 2027 presidential ambition. And the big headline, we see the Port Harcourt refinery not for sale, NNPC declares. Moving on, we see that the IPOB knocks UK government over silence of Nnamdi Kanu. And beneath it, we see that Russia declares state of emergency. Now we'll be looking into the story of the IPOB knocks UK government over silence on continued detention of Nnamdi Kanu. We heard that the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, has criticized the United Kingdom for allegedly being complicit in unlawful rendition and continued detention of their leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. IPOB, in a statement by the spokesman, media person and publicity secretary, Ima, has titled this United Kingdom complicity in Nigeria illegal radiation and detention of British citizen Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. A judicial and a moral implicement. This has considered in silence as the people come out to say that they've actually kept quiet for too long, and they seek that this be brought to justice as their member is actually kept under the United Kingdom for alleged crimes that they do not know. The next newspaper I'll be looking at is the Nation newspaper front page, where we see that Tinubu performs impressive in a key area, as the North leaders come out to say, where we also see pictures of different things that were carried out, like machineries, as well as other things that were brought into the North by our president Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The next newspaper front page we'll be looking at is the Blueprint newspaper, where we see we are committed to protecting press freedom, Idris says. And beside it, also in page 21, we see that Kayamo hosts MOFI investors and sectors high investment boost. Also, we see that Osun 2026 INEC fits over 360 to 794 uncollected PVCs. We see beneath it another big headline that how North fiscal position works stronger under Tinubu's regime, Bagudu says. Even as it cites a huge critical infrastructure across states, not just the North. Now, we'll be looking at our next newspaper, and it's the Guardian newspaper front page, where we see the big headline: suspended school feeding initiative leaves 9 million pupils and 250,000 jobs stranded. That story can be found in page 6. And in page 2, we see that Alia dissolves cabinet and appoints Agatha as a new course. Beside it, in page 3, we see that the marginalization, not fiscal position, stronger under Tinubu, says Bagudu. And beside it, in page 7, we see that NNPCL suspends sale of refinery, exports 4,000 of the refined products. We also see that 2027 Rufai reveals PDP in talk with Obi for major return. That story can be found in page 3. And in page 30, we see that Ministry of Education as well as NDLEA OK compulsory drug test for undergraduates as well as university students. We also see that in page 6, the nurses begin warning strike over poor condition and leave patients stranded. Beneath it, we see that Saudi Arabia to expand operation in Nigeria with a Trans-Blue partnership in page 5 of that newspaper. Moving to the next newspaper, which is our Daily Independent newspaper front page, we see that Senate gives NNPCL 3 weeks to explain 210 trillion naira audit queries. Beside it, we see that APC, PDP attack ADC over unseating Tinubu in 2027. We also see the big headline that despite the GDP growth, structural challenges weighed down the economy. Experts charge that the federal government on electricity and non-oil revenue as well as others. We also see in page 5 that the federal government announced plans to revive Kaduna textile. And beneath it in page 29, we see that Tinubu not behind northern problems, Governor Ubasani says. And in page 7, we see that First Lady donates 1 billion naira to victims of Benue attack. If you look beside it also, you can see that Tinubu offers automatic jobs, cash reward, scholarships to 200 NYSC honorees at page 7. We also see that H1 2025 Transcorp Group grows revenue by 279.7 billion naira as PBT to 85.7 billion naira. Another big headline, we see that the regulatory conflict may undermine investors' confidence. The federal government has warned. The next newspaper front page we'll be looking at is the Vanguard newspaper, where we see that First Bank grows earning by 18.1% to 1.6 trillion naira. That story can be found in page 19. And in page 32, we see that mixed reaction tells us INEC's verdict on local government polls. And in page 8, we see that hospital service disrupts as nurses strikes enter day 3. Negotiation continues tomorrow. We also see in page 7 that IDPs protest in Benue to block the Makurdi-Lafia road. And the big headline, we see that operating Port Harcourt refinery ahead of full turnaround, ill-informed. The NNPC has come out to say, ruling out the sales of the refinery, and also $18 billion spent on the 3 refineries term and others, says also. We also see in page 9 that Nigeria was heading for 1.2 trillion naira subsidy debt, the PCNG has come out to say. And we also see Labour Party alleged harassment of leaders, the Platinum Coup has come out to say. And we also see that presidency ex-ADC chairman breakers over alleged ministerial bribe offer in page 32. Now we'll be moving to the next newspaper, which is the Metric newspaper. Before we go into our Metric newspaper, we'll be going on a short break. When we come back, we would be looking at the other newspapers. Do stay with us. Welcome if you're just joining us. This is your newspaper review on Idea Television. And before from of the metrics, and we see that Dangote cementing position in Africa with a planned 3 meter grinding plant in Cote d'Ivoire. We also see that the Olojari operating PH refinery before full completion of rehabilitation, ill-informed sub-commercial says the sale of refinery highly unlikely in page 3. We also see amid the GDP rebasing, the IMF undergrades Nigerian economic growth forecast in page 12. And the big headline 2027, there is vacancy. Tinubu APC must reply, ADC has come out to say. We also see in page 3 that Tinubu marketing bold structure changes for inclusive growth, Bagudu says, and we see in page 3 that we want to go back home. Benue IDPs shut down highway in protest over prolonged displacement. And looking down, I am happy to continue with the Sumia has come out to say that he's happy to continue with the glass salary as you move. And beside it, the nurses strike cripples hospitals patients discharge in page 3. I still call my mom to ask how long to boil rice, DJ Copy has come out to say. The next newspaper front page you'll be looking at is the Daily Times newspaper, where Port Harcourt refinery not for sale, NNPC has come out to say in page 2. We also see that nurses begin 7 days warning strike in page 8 at the top of that newspaper front page. And beneath it, we see that the minister over the bilateral tension. We also see in page 2 that FGMO's cattle breeding centers in 6 geopolitical zones, agricultural minister has come out to say. And in page 2 we see that in page 12 we see that the aviation ministry MOFI to collaborate with sectors development. We also see that NAFDAC earned 2.5 billion naira from Lagos Onisha and Abadrog Market Road. The next newspaper we'll be looking at, which is the last newspaper, is our Daily Trust newspaper, where we see that NNPCL says refinery is not for sale. Then we also see in page 14 that troops kill 9 Boko Haram terrorists in Borno. And beside it, we see that 2027 North has no reason to support Tinubu re-election. Then the big headline, we see bandits no renewed repage in Castina, even as village evicted forced into space deals. And in page 35, we see that Benue government sacks chief of staff commissioner. Also in page 12, we see why indigeneship bill was withdrawn. And in page 25, we see money given to Super Falcons can pay 6,000 doctors and 66,000 teachers, as well as others. We also see the last headline that nurses strikes patients stranded at hospital nationwide. That story we're looking at. We heard that patients in public hospitals across the country were left groaning and stranded, as well as dejected and frustrated on Wednesday as nurses undergo their strike under the umbrella of the National Association of Nigerian Nurses nationwide, and as well as midwife federal health institution sectors. That has come out to become a serious issue in the country to the health sector. Now we'll be looking into our technological news, where we see that Meta shares jump as AI fuels ad sales, outweighing big capital co-stack. We see that Meta, the company behind Facebook and Instagram, has made a lot of money recently thanks to its use of artificial intelligence, AI, to improve advertising. The company earned over $47 billion in just 3 months. And AI helping the business shows a better ad to users, making the means more for people to click and buy things online, especially on Instagram and Facebook. That success caused by Meta's stock price to raise more than 11% in just one day. Even though the company is spending over a huge amount of money, between $66 billion to $72 billion this year, its boss, Mark Zuckerberg, says it is worth it. He believes that AI will keep improving company as well as business and to invest heavily in this kind of things, according to Mark Zuckerberg, is the future of the life of AI. He said AI is driving momentum specifically and has powered advertising tools and boosting conversation rates on Instagram and Facebook. So investing billions into it is not a problem because receiving is more than what he is putting into the particular business. He said Meta has joined in catching up with OpenAI on Google and trying to lead the next phase of AI through the super intelligence. He also says that a clear signal that AI is now the main engine to grow a big tech. And he says that Meta plays its the social media role in allowing business owners to actually openly come out and sell their business on several social media platforms. This is actually a big move from Meta to the social media platform, and Mark Zuckerberg has come out to say in agreement with the fact that he has been spending a lot of money on this, but what he has been receiving is more than that. And he says if you are to invest in something and to receive more, it is worth investing, and whatever would bring good return or more return in any investment, he agrees that investment or investing in that particular thing is not to go to waste. So we see a great and a big move from AI moving into different industries. Like we said, we always look for improvement, innovation done on this station. We actually celebrate those kind of move, and seeing that AI has moved into different sectors of the country as well as the nation. As well as the whole world is a good thing, and everybody's trying to catch up. So if you're a business owner on social media platform, do well to make use of this particular streamlined way to actually sell your business, because it is fast, it is easy, it helps good profit, says Mark Zuckerberg. So we'll be going, or we have come to an end of our newspaper review. But before I would leave you, I would be going through all the newspaper headlines we looked at for today. And the first newspaper we looked at was the Tribune newspaper. Like I said, when we saw that NNPC rules out the sales of Port Harcourt refinery. And we also looked at the Peak newspaper, where we say that Port Harcourt refinery is not for sale, NNPC declares. We also see in the Punch newspaper front page that FGI's 796 billion naira annually from 5% petrol surge. And we also looked at the Nation newspaper, where we see that Tinubu's performance impressive in a key area, says the Northern leaders. And we looked at the Blueprint newspaper, where we see that NNPCL rules out sales of Port Harcourt refinery, as well as INEC fit over 360 to 794 uncollected PVC Osun 2026. And we looked at the Guardian newspaper front page, where we see that suspended school feeding initiative leaves 9 million pupils as well as 250,000 jobs stranded. The next newspaper we looked at was the Daily Independent newspaper, where we see that despite the GDP growth, structural changes weigh down economy. Experts charge federal government on electricity and non-oil revenue as well as others. And the next newspaper we looked at was the Vanguard newspaper front page, where we see that operating Port Harcourt refinery ahead of full turn around, ill-informed, NNPC comes out to say. And the next newspaper we looked at was the Matrix newspaper front page, where we see there's vacancy. Tinubu APC must reply, ADC says. And the next newspaper we looked at was the Daily Times newspaper, where we see that nurses begin 7 days warning strike, as well as Ministers Bianca Judoa holds talk in Ghana over debilitarian tension. And the last newspaper we looked at was the Daily Trust newspaper, where we see bandits on renewed rampage in Castina, village evicted and forced into peace deal. And the last news we looked at was our tech news, where we see the Meta shares jump as AI fuels ad sale, overweighting big capital. That's all we have for you, and that's all we brought to you from our newspaper review. Do well to follow us on all our social media platforms, as well as stay glued to your screen, even as we will bring you more innovative programs after now. I am Jacobs Deborah, and this is bye for now. Stay informed, stay safe.